Is this the best backpack for the Camino de Santiago?
In this video, I'm going to walk you through the backpack I've used on all 3 of my hikes on the Camino de Santiago. Now, before we get started, I will say this is not sponsored in any way. I just truly love this backpack. I've been using it for years, not only on the Camino, but to hike up Mount Kilimanjaro, hike 14ers in the US. I just truly love and believe in this backpack, and I think it's a great option, especially if it's your first time doing something like this. That said, Osprey, if you're listening, I'm always open to working together, so feel free to reach out. So this is the Osprey Tempest 30 pack. It has since been updated to the 33, so make sure you're searching that if you're looking this up. I have also included a link in the description below, or you can type in the URL unanchoredpassenger.com/Osprey-pack. I did reach out to Osprey just to ask, how has this pack changed? What are the differences? And they really haven't made many significant changes since I bought this pack. So, I think this is still a good example to walk you guys through. The only differences that they told me about were that now the pack is a one size fits most. And then the water reservoir, which on my pack is in the outside of the pack, right here, kind of in between this area that goes, behind your back and then the pack itself. They have moved that now inside of the pack, which I think maybe is a good thing. I at least found it very difficult to get my water bladder in here, but to be fair, I was using a water bladder not designed for this pack, so it could have been a me problem. If you are using this latest, greatest version of the pack, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below on how that bladder reservoir is going. So in this video, I'll walk you through the various features of the pack, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and I hope that you can find this helpful as you're considering this pack for your Camino and other hiking adventures. Now, I'm not going to get into packing for the Camino in this video, but if you're interested in learning more about my packing list, what you should include in yours, definitely check out another video I have on that. I will link that above and below. And before we start this video, I do think it's really important to call out that everyone has a different body, different preferences, different way they walk on the trail. So just because this backpack works really well for me and, is one of the more popular packs on the Camino, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a good fit for you. I definitely encourage you to try out multiple packs and see what's right for you. All right, so to start, let's just talk about the official specs of this pack from the Osprey website. So Osprey says the load range is 10 to 30 pounds, which means the pack should be able to comfortably carry that amount of weight, and that might kind of vary based on you, your preferences, what you're packing. But generally, that's a good range, I would say, for the Camino. I usually carried around 20 pounds, and I was maybe a little bit on the heavier side of weight. But yeah, this is perfectly adequate for the Camino. This should be fine. The volume now, like I said, is 33 liters. My pack is 30, so the extra 3 liters, I imagine, is quite nice. This, I think, is a good amount of volume. For most Camino hikers, if you are hiking during a colder time of year, it might be a little tight to fit things in. So you may need a bigger pack if you're walking then, but for your average summer hiker, it's plenty of room. The actual weight of the pack is 2.65 pounds. I think for the Camino, you don't need to count ounces and pounds quite as much as somebody doing like a long through hike on the Appalachian Trail, but that's just something to keep in mind. According to Osprey, the main compartment is made of blue sign approved, 100% recycled, 100 denier high tenacity nylon, and there is a DWR treatment made without PFAS. The bottom is made with blue sign approved 100% recycled 420 denier nylon, and the DWR treatment is made without PFAS. So I'll get into more of what some of that means later. And then in terms of the price, this pack is $200. I just did a search to see kind of how other similar packs compared, and I would say most fall around that range, but I will link a few other, cheaper options to consider if you are on a tight budget. They're not significantly cheaper, but, they are some other options you might check out. Alrighty, so now let's just talk about the general features of the pack. I'll kind of give you a quick look through. So this pack has a mesh pocket in the front that you can unclip and, store whatever you need quick access to in there. There are 2 water bottle pockets on the side. There is a brain on top that has a pocket here externally that zips. And then internally as well. Then of course there is the large compartment. I will say I feel like there are lots of straps and things on this pack to help you kind of get a right fit, and they're also convenient for strapping things on if you need, say your socks to dry while you're walking. As I mentioned, it has a spot for a hydration bladder, so if that's your preference for carrying your water, that is an option. It has on the straps, a few different straps for hooking things on if you need to, and there is one pocket in one of the straps, as well as places to attach your trekking poles. There are hip belt pockets on both sides that are zippered, and then this is a more comfortable pack. It's definitely not a totally ultralight pack. It has pretty good padding on the shoulder straps, the hip belts. It has this airscape back that supposedly gives kind of a buffer between your back and the pack to help keep sweat from, really collecting back there. Now let's talk about what I like about the pack. So I think one of my favorite things about these Osprey packs that I know ultralighters really don't like are all the compartments. I feel like it's really easy for me to stay organized. I love to keep my fanny pack in the top, in this zippered compartment so I can easily grab it anytime I'm going somewhere. I can keep kind of like my Kindle and other things I want to quickly access in here. I feel like it just really helps me know where all my things are instead of having this one big giant black hole. Of course, for those of you who do really care about weight, having more compartments always adds some extra unnecessary weight, as some might say, but personally I like it. And if you're somebody who wants to stay organized, then you might love having all these different compartments too. Number two, I feel like it does really fit my Camino gear perfectly. I feel like my gear fits in very nicely and gives me a little bit of room for, snacks and extra things to add later. It's really not too much space, but it's not too little space either. And to demonstrate, I did put a bear canister in my pack just to show you how much volume is in there, so you kind of get that visual. So let me see if I can unearth this canister. All right, putting the bear can in here might not have been the best idea. It is very hard to get out, but I do think it is a great demonstration of the volume in this pack, just because it is quite big and, really helps you see how much you could fit in there. We're gonna try this. Yeah, I think the hardest thing here is, even though this pack does fit a lot, the opening is a little bit narrower than the rest of the pack, which is fine for me on the trail, but it's making it very hard to get this bear can out. Progress. Success. All right, so as you can see, this is quite a large amount of volume, and so this is pretty much what can fit in this pack. And there was even more room in there on top of just this. For reference, this is the REI Traverse Bear canister, which is pretty similar in size to the Bear Vault BV500 can. So if you're an outdoor backpacker and use bear cans or are familiar with them, that just gives you a good gauge of how much can really fit in this pack. Now again, I won't go through all of the Camino gear that I bring with me that fits into this pack, but if you want to see exactly what I'm able to fit into my bag, be sure to check out my packing list video that I've linked below, and I've linked that above again too. Now another thing I like about this pack is I find it is very comfortable, like the shoulder straps, the hip belts, all the extra padding. I find pretty comfy. And I remember on day 3 maybe of my first Camino, I was like, did I forget something in the albergue? Like, this feels very light. Like, I think just the way the pack carries the weight and the padding works really well for me. I do like this airscape back. I do feel like it, my back still gets sweaty, especially in summer if it's like 80, 90 degrees outside, but overall, I do feel like this does help keep me from getting too sweaty back there, especially when I'm hiking and it's hot on the Camino. Again, I would say I think this pack is fairly lightweight. Is it the lightest pack out there? No, but coming in at just under 3 pounds, it's not like one of those packs that's going to add tons of extra weight just in the pack itself. Another thing about Osprey packs that I almost forgot, and I can't believe I didn't mention this before, is they are one of the few pack manufacturers out there that makes packs specifically for women. A lot of pack companies make like unisex packs, but are pretty much designed on men. And we know, men's and women's bodies are obviously different. So I love that Osprey is doing what they can to make women's specific packs. So I think that's another great reason, if you're a woman watching this video, to consider this pack. That said, if you're a man watching this video and, you're looking for a pack, know that they do have the same kind of version of this pack for men. It is called the Osprey Talon 33. So you can check that out. I've also linked that below. Another thing for me that I almost forgot to mention that I really like about this pack is I feel like it's pretty easy to get the water bottles out of the side pouches, even without taking the pack off. So I guess I usually put my Nalgene here. This taller one's in some ways easier, in some ways harder, but you could see just pulled that right out. Then the Nalgene, I find it pretty easy to grab by this. Sometimes I'll have a carabiner on it and can pull it right out. I know that's really big for a lot of backpackers. You want to be able to easily get your water without having to take your whole pack off, especially when it can be hot and humid in Spain in the summer. So, that's one thing I really like about that pack, and something you should try as you're checking packs out too. The other thing about this pack that I think is nice for a lot of you is that it is a very versatile pack. It's really good for hikes like the Camino, where you are backpacking, but you don't have to carry a tent and food and all these things. But then it works really well as a day pack too. I've used this on lots of day hikes, and I have a smaller, I think 20 or 25 liter day pack that I had before I got this, but it doesn't have a frame or anything. And now I feel like I just can't go back to that other pack now that I have this. I pretty much always use this for all my day hikes. So if you get something like this, you can be confident in knowing that you're not spending tons of money on a pack just to use it on the Camino. You can certainly use it for future hikes and adventures outdoors. I will say I do also love the colors that Osprey puts out. Currently, they have a light blue, light green, and black version of this pack. And I feel like they're always putting out really beautiful colors in packs. I know that is really the least important feature, but if you're like me and you want to have a nice color pack, you can know that they do have a few options. Now, I think one of the best things to know about this pack is that REI carries it. So if you're in the US or elsewhere in the world where REI ships, it could be good to consider getting any pack from REI just because of their amazing return policy. If you are an REI co-op member, you can return this pack up to a year later and you could have used it. So I think for anyone who's doing something like this, where it's your very first time backpacking or carrying a pack like this, carrying things on your back day after day after day, it's really nice to have that reassurance to know that, hey, if this pack doesn't work out, I can go and take it back and get all of my money back. I do think there are a lot of really great, like small cottage companies, as people call them, out there that are putting together probably even better packs, technically. But I do think this is a great pack, especially if it's your first time, really for that reason, because of REI's generous return policy. I actually started out my first Camino with a pair of boots, and a few days in, my feet were just covered in blisters. My feet had swollen so much they barely fit in the boots. The boots were just a terrible option for me, and I was able to ship those back to the US and got all my money back from REI, even though I had walked maybe like 50 plus miles in them. So, that goes to show like they do really honor this commitment. So I think any pack that you can get at REI, even if you don't end up with this one, is a good choice for your first time like this. Another thing to call out is Osprey has an incredible lifetime warranty. So I actually reached out to them to just kind of clarify the details on this, but they confirmed, I guess the policies vary by country, but if you're in the US or Canada, they will pretty much repair or replace your pack for any kind of functional damage. So that's anything that would affect the utility of your pack, not just the appearance. So if you just got some scratches on it, but you could still use the pack, I don't think they would repair that. But, they even said they have tons of pictures people have submitted from pets chewing into their packs or porcupines getting a pack. So if your dog chews a hole in your pack, if you just have a ton of wear and tear that's kind of destroyed the pack after even decades of use, they will repair or replace it. And I think that's incredible. You don't find a lot of guarantees like that in the world today. A lot of places will just, honor a warranty if it's an issue that they caused because of some kind of defect. So that's another reason to consider Osprey, because of just this incredible warranty. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned how this is made from 100% Blue Sign approved fabric. When I read that, I was like, what the heck does this mean? I've never heard of this, but it is really cool, and I think it is worth considering packs that have this approval. I'll just read that out to you because I don't want to get this wrong, but I looked it up, and basically it means that they run their factories more efficiently, reducing overall water, energy, and chemical use. They protect their workers from exposure to chemicals. They meet stringent standards for water and air pollution control. They follow the world's strictest chemical safety requirements for their materials, so you can stay safer using their products. So really my takeaway from that is that Blue Sign approved means these fabrics are made in a way that is ethical, that is environmentally friendly, and I think that's great, and we should all support brands that are doing things like that, because frankly, not enough are. And lastly, what I really like about this pack is that they use a durable water repellent treatment without PFAS. Now, I feel like I'm always skeptical of these treatments regardless, and I'd be curious to see more into what they're actually using. If you know more about that, please comment below. I'd love to hear from you. But PFAS is one of those really toxic forever chemicals. I basically encourage you to see the movie Dark Waters, and you will want to stay as far away from PFAS as you can after seeing that movie. And it is in a lot of things like Teflon and, rain jackets and a lot of things that are waterproofed or like stick resistant. So I do appreciate that Osprey's doing what they can to avoid that and more harmful chemicals. All right, let's talk about what I don't like about this pack, because, not every pack is perfect. There's always going to be things that you don't necessarily like. Thankfully, these are all kind of small things for me, but they are things I don't like regardless. So I guess first, and this isn't a huge problem, but as you can see, these water bottle side pouches, they are a little bit short. Like, I feel like my Nalgene doesn't usually fall out, but I do have a bigger, taller Grail water bottle that I use for water purification sometimes. And I just brought this on, some hiking and camping trips out west and was using the Grail, and I felt like it was just falling out of my pack constantly, and I had to use a carabiner to clip it on. So that's one complaint. Okay, and then let me put it on and I'll show you. I appreciate that they have this front strap pocket, but I feel like it is so small. Like, I can fit sunglasses in here, although they have gotten smashed when I've done that before. So maybe don't recommend it, especially if you put this strap on second like I do. I mean, it is a good spot for like small snacks, but it really is not big enough for me personally. All right, and then another thing that I don't love about this pack, but it's not a deal breaker, are the hip belt pockets. So I'll show you. I feel like they're just really hard to zip, especially one-handed. Like, if you can see this, I'm really struggling. Like, the zipper is just kind of sticky. I really have to hold it with two hands. And then I feel like my phone can fit in here, but it is a bit of a struggle to kind of finagle it in. And I just have the iPhone 15 Pro. It's not like the Pro Max, that's the really big one. It does fit though, just a little bit more difficult. It's not like a really smooth process to get it in. And I mean, once I do get it in there, I can even fit other things in the pocket with it. Or like in my left-hand pocket, I usually keep like a hand sanitizer, some Advil, some snacks, maybe even some tissues. Like, you can shove a lot of things in these pockets. They're just a little bit difficult to finagle, which I don't always love. And then the other thing that I don't love about this pack is I feel like the official trekking pole holder is a little bit awkward. I haven't actually tried using this in a while because I just always have my trekking poles pretty much with me anyways, unless I have to scramble or something. But yeah, I really just don't love the trekking pole situation on this pack. So let me see if I can even figure it out. So yeah, I think they want you to put the poles in through here. But then where do I put it back here? I know there is somewhere. Oh, back here. Okay. Do you see this? Okay. Yeah, the strap seems kind of hard to tighten. But yeah, I mean, this is fine, but this is just awkward to me. I mean, I know a lot of packs have designs like this, but personally, I really don't want to have my poles like under my arm if I'm scrambling up rocks or something. I have a separate REI day pack, the one I mentioned that I never use anymore, and it has trekking pole attachments more like on the front side, and I much prefer that because I feel like this would just get in the way if you're trying to scramble and would be really obnoxious. And I really can't imagine, like, if you did want to break from using trekking poles on the Camino, I can't imagine like walking like this for miles and your arms just hitting your trekking poles. So that's one thing I don't like, but again, I always carry my trekking poles pretty much, so it's not a huge deal. Okay, and then lastly, like I said, I feel like I really hate the water bladder reservoir on this pack. It's just really difficult to get the bladder in, but to be fair, I am using a water bladder that came with my running vest and did not come with this pack. I imagine if I had one that was specifically from Osprey, it would work a lot better. And like I said, they did change the design of the reservoir and now it is inside the pack. So I imagine that might make it a little bit easier to get in. I'm not sure. Again, if you have that pack and you know, I would love to hear from you in the comments and see what you think. All right, so that's all I have when it comes to the things I like about this pack, the things I don't like. And I figured I would give a quick tutorial on just how to try on this pack. So if you are considering this, you know what to do when you're at home, when it comes in. Now, I am not an expert on backpack sizing and fit, so keep that in mind. I am also going to link a video from REI below on this. They are much better at talking about this than I am. Honestly, now that I think about it, I think my pack currently is not even sized appropriately. So that's my fault, but I have been learning some things as I've been looking into more long-term backpacking. So let's try it out. So first step to trying out a pack, you want to have the straps as loose as possible. And you also want to have some weight in your pack. That's really important because if you try on packs without weight, you're really not going to get a good sense of what the pack really feels like for you. So make sure you do that. And so first, you will want to do the hip belt. You know, a majority of your weight while you are hiking, backpacking should sit on your hips. I think I've read typically it's recommended to have around 80% of the weight. So it's not all of the weight, but it is most of the weight. So you want the hip belt to be pretty tight. And theoretically, the pad should sit kind of right around your hip bones or just above. I feel like usually, historically, I've had mine way too high. And I mean, honestly, it's worked for me, but now I'm learning I should have it a little bit lower. So we're going to try it out. Then next, you will want to adjust the shoulder straps. You know, these should sit pretty snug on your shoulders and help your back kind of get close to the pack. You don't want to have any huge gaps in the shoulders, you know, where they're coming up like that. But you don't want the shoulders to be too tight either. And then you want to do the chest strap. This really shouldn't be tight at all. And I guess I was bad and didn't loosen this one, but you know, I'll loosen it up. It should be just enough where you have a little bit of tension, but it shouldn't be, you know, so tight that you're like struggling to breathe. So I'll loosen that back up. And then last, you will want to do the load lifters. So these are these straps here at the top, and they help you, you know, lift the load so it sits closer to your back. I guess I have these pretty tight, honestly. It probably doesn't help. I don't have too much weight in here at the moment, and I usually use a mirror to help me with this. I definitely recommend that. And depending on where your pack sits, it'll probably be about a 45-degree angle or so. I think mine, just since this is a bit of a shorter pack, isn't quite like that, but you know, play around with that, and you basically want the pack to be sitting straight up and down. You don't want it to be hanging way off your back, but you don't want it to be pitched too far forward either. So yeah, I hope you found that helpful in trying on your pack, and you know, you might want to consider going to a store like REI to get sized and, you know, have them help you fit it for the first time. I've done that myself recently as I've been looking into bigger backpacks for longer hiking trips, and they're usually super helpful with that. Well, thank you so much for watching. That's all I have for you today. Again, I have the link for this in the description below, or you can type in unanchoredpassenger.com/Osprey-pack. I've also included the link to my packing list below, so check that out and check out that video next if you're looking for tips for packing on the Camino. And yeah, if you have any questions about backpacks or anything, or any experience with packs that you've liked, definitely let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Of course, I'm just one person with my own experiences, but I know there's a lot of really great packs out there, so definitely share below if you have one that's worked well for you. Thanks so much for watching. Buen Camino.